Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We have the TIAA team with us today who have been very approachable and have been of excellent help in agreeing to provide insight into the cyber industry for the graduating students. In this panel discussion, we will discuss career paths present in the corporate sector, what skills are required for different roles, and how can students acquire the skills required. And we will also understand how cybersecurity teams work in organizations, the importance of cybersecurity certifications, and some advice from the panel to students who plan to join the field. So let's get started. We will start with Jeff, and my first question to you is, a lot of students are showing interest in pursuing a career in the field of cybersecurity. For these cyber aspirants, can you provide an overview of the different cybersecurity departments present in the organization, and how can students develop their profile to pursue their careers in them?
Sure. Thank you, Durga, for having us be part of this panel. So when I think of cybersecurity in general, I often try to think what people think cybersecurity is, right? And a lot of the times they think it's a guy with a hoodie or gal with a hoodie somewhere in a dark corner trying to hack a system or network. And that's the general perception of it, right? But in terms of reality, we have quite a few different departments, right? And I'll cover the three main basic ones. The first one is architecture. And one thing that I love to do, I love the rule of three. So I'm going to cover three different areas that architecture really, somebody who aspires to be an architect should focus on. And they all begin with the letter C. So the first one is cloud environments, right? So any student looking to be a solutions architect should really learn the different cloud environments. We have AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. Those are the primary main cloud environments. But we also have cloud environments that are on-prem, meaning they're private clouds, right? And these usually consist of VMware, Citrix, or Microsoft Hyper-V, right? And I know a lot of these terms may be new to the students here, but you can easily go to YouTube and find out more. So really the foundation, I would say, is look at the cloud environments, get familiar with those different services, right? And there's plenty on YouTube. There's also a cloud guru, right? And there's plenty of certifications you can get. The second C is for cybersecurity frameworks. As an architect, you really need to understand what frameworks are there. Like, for example, the MIS Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. And you have different categories like detect, protect, identify, respond, and recover. You have ISO 27001, you have COBIT. So there's quite a bit out there. Having a good understanding of these frameworks will give you, will let you map requirements to controls, right? And this may not make a lot of sense now, but once you begin designing architectures, you have to map your capabilities to controls. Mm-hmm. And the third one, which I think is probably the most important aspect, is communication, right? As an architect, as a solutions architect, you're going to be really a key zone team member, right? You're going to be pulling in a whole bunch of different teams. You have to know your audience, right? Some of your audience will be highly technical. Some of them will not be technical. Some of them will be executives. So you need to find out and be attuned to your audience, right? The second group or department will be engineering. I'm an engineer. I've been an engineer since I was 18 years old. And again, same thing, cloud environments, right? Learn AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. And from an engineering perspective, really be hands-on, right? Like, how do you configure a VPC, right? Like literally go in there and build a VPC from scratch, right? And you have websites like A Cloud Guru where you can have a sandbox and you can actually create these environments, right? The second C is for coding. Like before, when I was growing up in IT, a lot of what we did was understanding Active Directory, Microsoft technologies. Now is really infrastructure as code. So learning how to code in Python, learning what PowerShell is with different commands, that will help you a long way. Third one, again, communication, right? As an engineer, we think everyone understands technology at the level that we understand it, and that's so wrong. Like, and we get, as engineers, we get frustrated. Like, well, what do you don't know what Lambda function is or that. As an engineer, we have to be flexible, right? In our communication, we have to be storytellers. So again, communication is super important. Be attuned to your audience. And the last department I'll cover is operations. Communication is at the very top of being a proper, I think, analyst in operations, whether you're doing vulnerability management or you're doing threat hunting. As an operations analyst, you want to be able to tell your partners in engineering like me or the architecture team, hey, this is what I need a tool to do or a service to do for me to effectively do my job.
Right.
If you cannot effectively communicate that use case, it's going to be difficult, right? And second one is being curious. You're going to have a ton of tools you're going to come across. And what do you do with that data, right? How can it provide more value to you and your partners when you're trying to defend and protect? Last one, but I think it's probably the most important, is chill. Like learn to relax, chill. As a operations analyst, you're literally at the front lines, right? You're doing the threat hunting and not being overwhelmed by all the data you're getting, right? As a security operations center analyst, you have a lot of responsibility, right? You're there looking at incidents, you're responding to incidents, and you have to find ways of looking after yourself, asking for help, either from teammates or even your manager, right? So in a nutshell, architecture, engineering, and operations are primarily the main departments within cybersecurity. There are others, but those are the main that I would highlight.
Of course. Thank you so much, Jeff. I think you've kind of covered so well. You kind of explained it so well in a broad overview. And one of the main things that generally people miss out about any cyber role or the departments as well is that the communication part, right? Understanding, like, that is the base of it. Can be talking to your business or talking to the technical people. You still require that kind of communication for you to be able to bridge that gap. So thank you so much for providing an insight into it. My next question is for Brittany. What are the different career paths within cybersecurity from entry-level position to advanced roles? And what are the different skills required for these different set of roles?
Great, yeah, thank you so much. So I originally planned on kind of going through maybe a little bit more in depth of what Jeff was going to talk through regarding just 3 different areas of the organization. But I can say that I'm going to probably switch up my talk a little bit and say, from an entry level perspective, well, I'll start with me. I'm actually on the fraud team. So fraud and cybersecurity just came together. I have always been interested in cybersecurity. I have a master's in IT with a concentration in cybersecurity. So I have the background. I'm so excited to be a part of the family now. But what I can say from an entry level perspective, I mean, getting your name out there, interning. Internships are huge. Asking questions and networking in your community or at your school. Being able to just, make those connections, which help guide you towards cybersecurity in general. I can tell you, like I said, I've always been interested in cybersecurity, and what I did at TIAA, I was like knocking on people's doors. I was like, hey, I'm Brittany. What do you do? I want to know more about you. And so I will say internships are huge. That helps get your foot in the door. For me and my personal experience, what I did was it is in fraud, but once again, there are a lot of similarities between the two of us, is I started in an analytical role. So there are different roles such as cybersecurity analyst, information security or response analyst, security systems admin. Starting at some of those levels helped guide me to understand, okay, what's the problem? Let me look at the data. And then be able to build, all right, so I understand where the data is, and get into more technical roles such as analytics and guiding like customer authentication protocols, looking at perimeter security, things of that nature. But I do think that it's important to also mention two other important sectors of cybersecurity, which is governance and project management. We talk very technically, and we say a lot of very technical jargon with cybersecurity, but it's not always that technical. Governance is huge. So being able to help structure risk and regulatory compliance, what a lot of times what people are looking for there is someone that can communicate, someone that can research, blending of technical and legal issues, as well as analytical skills. So IT auditors, you could start kind of more of an entry level, getting into risk management and governance, director of governance. And then as far as project management, that's huge. Being able to kind of push us to a final project outcome. So what people are looking for there is just planning, organizing, directing, making sure that we're on time and within scope. While saying those words together, it might not seem, that involved. It is so involved. You have to get so many people in so many different areas to all collaborate and work towards a common goal. So different roles are cybersecurity project manager, all the way up to director of project management. So I know that there are probably some things that I missed out there, but yeah.
But thank you, Brittany. I think a few things that I've heard about from a lot of conversations I've had from folks out in some of the organizations about cybersecurity, right, is that networking plays a very important role especially for students. Is that when you start a network, you kind of understand the work. It's just not about getting to know of course, one of the my personal takeaways from my podcast or the panel discussions I do is I get to meet such great people, and especially from cybersecurity industry, one thing I've seen is everyone is ready to help you. Everyone is out there to go ahead and at least guide you or provide you with the right kind of sources who can help you. And so networking has helped me, and it's something I'm hearing from a lot of industry experts as well. So thank you for bringing that up. And another interesting thing that you've mentioned is that, since the kind of roles that are already present within cybersecurity are so varied, the experience or the skill set that is required is also varied. It is not limited to that, you only have to come from a technical background or anything. So if you understand project management, you do have a role for you, or you have a profession within cybersecurity in one particular team, right? As well as if you are completely wholly technical, then you do have it probably in AppSec or any other places. So so well put, and thank you for sharing about that. So my next question is to Merit. How important are certifications in cybersecurity field, and are any certifications required to acquire the required skills that we generally talk about? And how can one choose which certifications to pursue in cybersecurity?
I love this question, and I will start off with piggybacking from the networking piece. Certifications will not weigh the same as networking. Networking, I would say, is definitely one of those things that will help you get your foot in the door and will help you find your way into cybersecurity more than any certification that's out there. But I love this question because I have asked this myself many times. I myself don't have a certification. I didn't start in cybersecurity, and I was able to get into cyber without any certifications. You will get a lot of different answers depending on who you talk to about certifications. I come from a non-technical background, so there's not a whole lot of certifications for the non-technical folks. I will start off with that. But if you are trying to get into the technical space, if you are trying to get your foot in the door, if you are trying to move up to management, I would say that that's when certifications play a huge role. Why? Because they're becoming a little more specific, geared towards the different areas that you may want to go into. For example, if you want to be in architecture, there are a ton of certifications for architecture now. If you want to go into pen testing, right? There are now certifications for pen testing. So I would say this answer will vary a lot of times depending on who you ask. But I will say, kind of back to Jeff's point, you got to sometimes let yourself get immersed into the situation that you're in. So for example, if you're a student who is pursuing a degree in cybersecurity and you graduate, you go into an internship with cybersecurity, you don't necessarily need to have a certification off the bat. Why? Because you are already starting within cybersecurity. You are going to need to first understand, let yourself brew into what you're learning, let yourself find your passions, what you want to do within cyber, because hopefully once you get into cyber, you can see how much of a black box it is right now, kind of like to Brittany's points and Jeff's points. But let yourself brew into that, and then to think about which certification you want to go into. But if you are like a computer science student that is starting in an internship with software development or something within the computer science space, and you are already doing an internship that's outside of cybersecurity, then I might recommend a cybersecurity certification, because that shows recruiters, it shows managers that you are trying to get your buy-in to cybersecurity. The caveat to that is that unfortunately, a lot of cybersecurity certifications, or at least the top 10 or the top 5, I'm going to say, do require some experience. Some of them required experience for 1 or 2 years in IT. Others require up to 5 years in cybersecurity specifically. So my recommendation would be to just look at Security Plus. That one doesn't require any background information or any existing experience in cybersecurity. And that one is a good one to share and show to hiring managers or recruiters that you are interested and you're trying to get your foot in the door. The other thing to consider is your budget with these. They tend to run a little bit on the pricier side. If you are working for an organization currently, I would make this part of your development, make it part of your training so that they can, one, pay for it, and also to support you with the training and development leading up to your certification. So think through, I would say, if you are interested in a certification, think based on your interests, where you want to go, because certifications can, again, there's a lot of specialties now. It can range from all different sides now, mostly on the technical side. 2, they require experience, and 3, they're pricey. So just keep those things in mind as you're looking at certifications. And again, what applies to me may not necessarily apply to you. Do your research. There's a lot of great information. I was actually doing some of this research to help answer this question. Coursera has a great article on the top 10 certifications. That will give you a complete breakdown of everything that you need leading up to it. And it also give you price points, and it'll also even tell you the careers that have those types of certifications. And they'll also give you a nice breakdown of who has them too. So like LinkedIn has a number of how many jobs have that particular certification. So definitely do your research, look into it. not all certifications are created equal. Not all career paths are created equal. So definitely take a look at which one applies to you. Again, I didn't start from a cybersecurity background, but I'm still in cybersecurity and I'm moving into the technical space. I'm pursuing my master's in cybersecurity, and that's a different route that you can take as well outside of cybersecurity. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
No, I think this is one question I generally ask most of the cybersecurity experts, right? Because I get a varied answer, and partly it is true as well, because I think one of the reasons I've realized over time is that for the invention of certifications to come into picture, cybersecurity as a field itself has evolved rapidly, but it is still maturing as such. So there's no particular defined way to know that if you do acquire the skills or not. So kind of, I believe that's where certifications have come into the picture. But as you said, that does not necessarily mean that, if you acquire a certification, only then you'll be getting a job or things like that. I like your point where you mentioned that networking is much better than certifications. So that actually helps a lot, is what I personally believe too. If you want a structured kind of an approach, or if you just want to learn in a structured manner, that's where certifications probably may help you. And as well as you've mentioned, as you're climbing up the ladder, if you're going to a management role, a certain things become required, like, they become a requirement as part of compliance, rather than as part of if you do have the required skills or not. If you're not having the required skills, you can't apply, but then these become as part of the compliance the organization has to a place for again for its own requirements, right? So I love the way you've mentioned that, you've kind of detailed everything, and thank you so much for it. So my next question is for Riley. What skills and qualifications are preferred by employers when hiring for cybersecurity positions? And do non-technical skills such as, soft skills, I think partly Jeff and others have also answered this, but do the soft skills and the non-technical skills play a role in this? And is a minimum years of experience required to enter the field, or can students who graduate also apply to roles?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I'll take it back to what Jeff first said. What do people think about cybersecurity when they think of cybersecurity? And I think there's often that misconception that we're in the dark room with our hoodies pulled up, hands on keyboard, always coding, right? And not to say that there aren't people that are always hands-on coding or hands-on the keyboard coding, but there's more to cybersecurity than that. So first I'll say, I'm going to answer the question a little bit backwards, but first I would say that there are definitely opportunities for recent graduates in cybersecurity, especially at TIAA. Obviously there are going to be some roles, like for example, Jeff's role, that are going to require a certain level of experience within the industry. You can't expect to graduate in day one in the real world, be managing 10 people, 10 engineers on the team. It's not realistic. But that being said, this industry does need young, fresh minds with innovative ideas and solutions so that we can stay on pace with the ever-growing and evolving threat landscape. So TIA has actually designed early talent programs with that specific purpose in mind, right? So our rotational programs were built with recent graduates in mind to help expose us to multiple teams and really grow our experience. I myself came out of a cybersecurity rotational program, so I had that opportunity to rotate between 4 different teams and spend 6 months on each of these teams so that I could really work on growing my skill set, because like Mary, I am not from a cybersecurity background. I don't have that technical background. So working or rotating through these multiple different teams really gave me that opportunity to grow my skill set right out of college in cybersecurity. So what skills are needed to set you up for success in cybersecurity from the perspective of a recent graduate? So of course, those harder technical skills are going to be important. So what I often look for is that minimum exposure to some of those coding languages and applications that we use in cybersecurity. So what that can include is exposure to coding languages like Python and Java. SQL is a great application that's used across cybersecurity, across the enterprise. If students are into data visualization, I always love to recommend looking into Tableau, because that's a great application that is, again, used across the enterprise. And then these are just a few commonly leveraged skills, but are by no means exhaustive. And again, would emphasize that exposure is key. We by no means expect that our early talent associates join our teams and day one be proficient in all these technical skills, but that exposure sets you up for success. And then in terms of soft skills, oftentimes I believe that those soft skills are overlooked, but these skills are just as valuable to our early talent associates as those technical skills. So the number one in my book, like Jeff said, will always be communication. It's so easy, especially in this industry, to get so focused and siloed on what we're working on that communicating what we're doing often falls to the back burner. So that open, clear, and honest communication should always be a part of your everyday tasks, especially with your manager. Having that communication with your manager will really help you develop that relationship, which is one of the most valuable relationships in your career. And then outside of communication, what really stands out to me in terms of soft skills are passion and curiosity. So one example I would give is I was on an interview with an early talent associate, and we asked him to share about a relevant project he was working on. And you could just see that like passion and excitement shine through when he was talking about that project. And not only could we see that passion, but he also shared how he was integrating AI into his current project. So he's passionate about it, and he's also staying curious about the current threat landscape and incorporating that into what he's working on. So to me, that communication, that passion, that curiosity, those are the things that are going to keep you interested and engaged in the industry, whereas those more technical skills, that's what's keeping you relevant within the industry. So those are just a few of my thoughts on what some of the skills that's needed in cyber for our early talent associates.
Thank you so much, Riley. And again, the one thing that students can bring to the cyber industry, I personally, as you said, like in your part of conversation, right? There's a new thought process. So the kind of, you can come from any background, or like, you can come from any major, but the kind of thought process that you require is the problem solving thought process, right? So if you do have problems that come along in cybersecurity, and if you can kind of build that fresh thought process, you'll have better cybersecurity posture that you can build for the organization as such, right? And I like the way you've mentioned about few tools. It's just not the coding, you need the networking as well as the data visualization tools, because data visualization probably when cybersecurity folks, I mean, it's something very basic to understand is that cybersecurity itself is for protecting the business, right? So that becomes very easy when you're trying to communicate between management and the technical people. It becomes very easy when you're using visualization tools, and it is easy to communicate what you want to communicate. It is very well put out there. So thank you again. As you said, communication, the passion and the curiosity, that's where it starts. Irrespective of the field they come from or the major they come from, I think that is the basis. If you do have the passion and the curiosity, and the way you've mentioned, you can see that in the eyes when they're trying to talk to you about the projects and everything, right? So thank you. It was amazing. So my last question is for all of you, and we'll start with Jeff. Is what advice would you give to someone who's aspiring to enter the cybersecurity field?
Sure. So definitely, as Riley mentioned, right, be curious. Be super curious, but be disciplined in your curiosity, right? So learn one area, focus on one area. Once you have enough knowledge, continue, right, on to the next. Cybersecurity, it takes many different teams to materialize any effort or to do anything. We can't do things just on our own. So it's a team effort, learning how to collaborate with others, learning when to lead. Being a leader doesn't mean always taking the flag and running with it. Sometimes it's leading by consensus, being a team player, right? So communication is also important in that. And ask a lot of questions, right? When you begin either an internship or a technical associate program, ask questions from your peers, right? Your manager, teachers, people who you consider mentors, right? No question is a bad question. So ask a lot of questions, be curious. And lastly, I know that a lot of the students who are listening to this are focused on either computer science or cybersecurity, right? In terms of the future of cybersecurity, right? With generative AI, it's changing the entire field, right? Coding will always be important from a technical perspective, but in the future, it will likely be how to structure prompts, right? How to write into a chat bot in order to get a response, right? So having that verbal and that written communication is going to be super key in the future. So these are some of the I think the areas where anyone looking to get into cybersecurity can look into, right, and develop.
That's excellent, Jeff. I think you've covered a lot of things within that, and especially on the focus of Gen AI, which is going to change the future, right? And to understand things from that angle is also important. I agree. So, Brittany, any thoughts that you want to share?
I'm pretty sure Jeff hit probably every single topic that I was going to hit there, but I will say, I think putting yourself out there, and while that's really hard to do sometimes, is key to learning, growing, and, you know, helping hone in on your communication skills and just learning a little bit more about broader areas. Like I kind of already mentioned before, I was interested in cybersecurity, but really I was in fraud, and we didn't really have too many conversations between the two. And at the time, and I was like, well, let me go. So I joined a business resource group, and I met some people in those groups, and I was like, ooh, do you know someone that sits in cybersecurity? How can I talk with them? I know that, I mean, aspirations are one thing, but getting yourself out there and doing it is another. So I think the biggest thing is just continue to stay curious, ask all of the questions, even if you think they're dumb questions. There's never a dumb question. Someone else in the room is asking the same thing. And yeah, just stay curious.
And one thing to add to what you said is when you ask questions, I think the community itself is built so well that they are very responsive. No one judges you. I'm not, that's in general, and as well as in cybersecurity, because even I've worked in the field for a while. And one thing I've observed is the collaboration that you have with folks, and the initiative they take to help you is amazing. So as you said, when you're asking the questions, no one is going to judge you from the field, at least. I agree. Moving ahead with Merit, your thoughts?
Again, all great answers. I already took the ones that I had on top of mine, but I would say to just do your research. Cybersecurity is still this black box, but it's still this very fast moving puck that is continuing to move at 100 miles per hour. And the industry is always changing. The threat landscape is always changing. Priorities are always changing. So make sure to stay on top of those things that are going on with the cybersecurity threat landscape. And also that'll help educate where you want to land within cybersecurity. I think a lot of the questions that I get, especially from students, it's like, okay, what is cybersecurity? And it's because a lot of the times they haven't done the research to look into, oh, there's this specific team within this specific part of cybersecurity. Well, try to dive into it a little bit more and look at what skill sets are behind that. Look at what technologies are being used behind that, so that when you meet with these people, when you network with people, you can have a conversation with them and actually find things that are interesting to you, or things that are not necessarily interesting to you, or things that you read on something and then it's completely different from what that person is telling you, right? So I would say to just do your research on cybersecurity. If this is a passion of yours, continue to dive into it. Like Brittany said, take action now, just to dive into it and just get more involved into it, because before you know it, you'll be in it.
Agreed. I totally agree. And some great things that you've mentioned is, you need to research, stay updated, and take action, which is important. So, Riley, please.
Yeah, definitely emphasize everything everyone's already said. Do your research, get involved in these events and attending webinars such as these. Stay informed on what's currently going on in the threat landscape. And last, I would say, is build your brand. If you haven't started hearing this over and over again, you're going to start hearing it over and over again. But your brand plays a major role in who and your career. Think about you. What are people saying when you leave the room, when your name's brought up? What are the thoughts that are evoked? What are the emotions that are evoked? Are they good or are they bad? And do people remember you when you after you have a conversation? All of these questions are going to play a huge role into what your brand says about you. And there are a lot of components into building your brand, right? So I would say start small with your LinkedIn profile. Employers and recruiters are always going to be looking at these, and more often than not, it's the first thing they see before they even have a sit-down conversation with you. So if I were to pull up your LinkedIn profile today, what would that tell me about who you are? And are you going to take initiative when you join our company? Are you going to get involved and be a part of the company, or are you just there to code and get out, right? So what does your LinkedIn profile say? Start small there, and then just go from there. Keep building your brand, and hopefully it's saying good things about you.
Absolutely amazing suggestion, Riley. Like, building the brand does play an important role, and where you want to see yourself as well, right? So, thank you so much. And I think I need to thank each of you for kind of making this such a good conversation. I've personally learned a lot from all of you and from this panel discussion. So, thank you, and you've always been very, very supportive in this entire journey of getting this, online. So, thank you.